I'd like to call the public hearing, the Board of Selectmen for December 18th, 2024 to order. The purpose of this public hearing is to obtain public comment, consider enactment of an ordinance prohibiting retail and hybrid cannabis establishments and the use of cannabis on town property. Copies of the proposed ordinance amendments have been on file and available for inspection in the office of the town clerk. All interested persons are invited to attend and be heard, and we will hear from everybody. That's the way we do things here. And the way we try to do things here is we try to respect varying opinions. So there will not be any applauding or booing of anybody's position. Please accord everybody the respect that they earned as being a citizen in this country and a resident of this town. So in the past at different meetings, so that's where we are. I'm going to just for those of you who haven't had the opportunity to look at the ordinance online, there are several sections to it. The proposed ordinance talks about the authority vested in the Board of Selectmen via the Connecticut General Statutes, and which allows us to make decisions like we are contemplating making this evening. Second section of that ordinance deals with the definitions, which I think define the 11 categories of cannabis, regulated cannabis activities in the state of Connecticut, owing to the fact that the state legislature legalized cannabis a couple of years ago. Section 3 is the prohibition of retail and hybrid cannabis establishments in the town of Guilford, which I suspect is probably going to be the topic of most of the conversation this evening. There is also another section, section 4, that deals with the prohibition of temporary cannabis events. Another section, which would be 5, cannabis product use prohibited on town property. The enforcement of same is somewhat challenging. We have a similar ban on smoking on town property. So you can probably suspect that some of the other cannabis products that are used, that are ingested, etc., enforcement of same is going to be next to impossible. Section 6 deals with the sale, gift, or transfer of cannabis products on town property, and it is prohibited. And then section 7 says enforcement, which really scares me because the first line says the first selectmen, officers of the Guilford Police Department, and the zoning enforcement officer and the planning and zoning commission have the authority to enforce the fines established herein by citation. So that is what this board has decided to put forward to this public hearing for your input prior to this board making a decision on what we're going to do with this proposed ordinance, which will most likely occur at a meeting to commence at the end of this public hearing, immediately after the public hearing. So, and the reason for same is we may have been kicking this can down the road for a little while, but one of the challenges is if we don't do something one way or the other, we are at the discretion of applicants who would like to open a cannabis establishment in town. We currently have a prohibition on it, which is set to expire at the end of January, and we'd be loath to try to extend it yet again for what would be, I think, the 4th time. So that's why we are having a meeting scheduled immediately after this public hearing. So with that, are there any other comments from my fellow board members? No suggested changes to what I've just talked about?
I think we actually extended it a little more than 4 times. I mean, we spent a lot of time on this, you know, yes. Or you know, talk to us about your feelings. So it's been, I think, over 3 years, but we have to, as Matt said, we have to make a decision.
With that, I'm going to open it up to comment. I would like for folks to come sit at this table up here, that chair on the end, state your name and address for the record, and then please share with us your thoughts. We're going to try to limit that to 3 minutes. Everyone will have an opportunity to speak. And depending on how long that goes, if there are opportunities for folks or people who want to speak again, we could certainly consider that. What I do not want this to turn into is a classic Saturday Night Live, he said, she said, and people fighting with each other in the middle of this room. That's not what this forum is for. This is for you to express your opinions about this.
You're gonna go back and forth between live and folks.
Yeah, and Tracy will manage the live, so we'll try to. How many do we have on online now?
11 and one person with their hand.
Okay, good. Well, we're going to start in a room for those who decided to come visit us and share their thoughts. You can't be that bashful, but
You're here.
Please come up.
Do we know that the people on Zoom can hear us? Okay. I know sometimes that's an issue here.
Is it coming through clear? Can somebody just give us a high sign that we're doing okay? You can hear us?
You can hear us? Anybody? Just put your hand up and say a thumbs up if you can hear us.
There we go.
Big go.
Well done.
COTE.
You're gonna please speak up a little bit so
Oh,
the
okay.
folks in the room can hear you. There are microphones.
Okay,
somewhere.
my name is Lynn Cope, last name is COTE. I live at 2000 Little Meadow Road, lived there for 49 years. And first I'd like to thank the board for taking their time, their long time to get to this point, but that I personally appreciate it, and I think the town needed you to do that. A person that doesn't agree, who thinks recreational marijuana, the lenience throughout the country is a mistake, will set that aside. I think you've done a good job. I think it's the most probably that you could do. So I would endorse this draft legislation or ordinances that you put in. I think enforcement is near impossible, but it sets a tone or a statement for the town, not only for our youth, but for everybody else that stood up for something that we really don't want to enter our town on a daily basis. So again, I thank you for that.
Lynn, thank you very much. I will just one editorial note, and I probably don't tend to do this with everybody. The term recreation was very interesting. We had been chastised by our former director of Parks and Recreation, and to say to refrain from using the term recreational use because it conflicts with the mission that he spent 35 or 40 years on. So I don't mean to pick on you, but we've not used the term recreational in some time because of that.
Legal adult use.
Legal adult
It's
use.
a little blocky, but
So, yeah.
Well, I'm a pharmacist by profession. So,
Well, yeah, and
had medicinal, what they call medicinal
purposes.
marijuana for many years, which I would support, but not using it for a diagnosis or medicinal purposes, I do not. But that's where we are in this state and in this country, and I think a very good job on handling it for the town. So I support your draft.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's go online. Who's first up?
Space meeting.
Say that again. Name
Amanda,
and address for the record, please.
Amanda Sweeney, 1394 Little Meadow Road. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to ask a question because so much time has gone by, but I do remember there being a comprehensive survey that went out to all citizens that didn't have a terribly small end value for response rate that did indicate an overwhelming support, primarily because of the budgetary issues that we face in this community. As a parent who's raised 3 kids here, I'm terribly concerned about the possibility of me being able to maintain my home, which saw a 50% increase in my taxes, not just the value of my home, but in my taxes in the last 2 years. And being able to get an establishment that has been proven in other towns to bring in tax dollars to serve our community and continue to provide, I think is something that is beneficial. Being such a close community, by denying our citizens the right to stay local, we're just pushing them to Brantford, where Brantford gets the benefit of our tax dollars. You're not talking about a high volume business where traffic, like when Costco was coming, when the rock pile was coming, these are not the issues that other towns have faced. And other towns are now facing less issues with their budget because they've made the fiscally responsible decision. Because no decision for us in this community to say yay or nay is going to stop people from making those purchases legally just a few miles away. And like you said, virtually unenforceable as far as the other ordinances. But I just really would like you, if you can, to remind us what the response rate and the opinion was when it was asked if we support that initiative, if I'm allowed to ask that question.
Amanda, typically we don't do question and answers, but I will because this was entered and it was discussed at a different point. We had nearly 1,000 folks that participated in that survey. And your use of the end value word suggests that you know a little bit about polling. And there were some questions about the statistical validity of a sample of that size with, around 18,000 adults in our community. But it was about a 60 to 40% in favor, as I recall. I don't think
that was my memory as well.
Yeah, I got a study here. But I will also remind you that this board, on several occasions, never looked at this as a financial arrangement. The tax the amount of revenue that potentially could come from this, particularly as demonstrated by what's going on in Old Saybrook and in what's going on in Brantford, would not move the needle significantly on anybody's tax bill on their property. So this board had always looked at this from a perspective that wasn't driven by tax revenue. But that's the answer to your question. Next up, somebody in the room?
Thank you.
Come on.
My name is Deborah O'Neill, and I live off of Moose Hill on Fox Ridge. I was at the last meeting. And what I wanted to say is I read the ordinance. I thought you did a great job of making a compromise between those who wish to ban cannabis establishments completely and those who wish to, and this is a phrase from the last meeting, wanted Guilford to be a marijuana mecca. If I read the ordinance correctly, cannabis deliveries are allowed. So there are at least 2 24-hour cannabis delivery shops within the adjacent towns. So those people who wish to indulge have ready access. Either they can pick it up themselves or they can have it delivered. Also, at the last meeting, there was the issue about the lost tax revenue. My taxes went up significantly so that I appealed it to not my
Satisfaction.
yeah, not my, well, yeah. But since the ordinance allows every type of cannabis establishment, with the exception of the retail, then won't we get revenue from those grows or whatever they're called, or the producers, I believe is whatever those terms. So we're still going to get tax revenue, though you said it wouldn't make a significant difference, but so it would just be sort of extra monies, I guess. Now, and we can amend this ordinance in the future, right? So we can take another look at it in a few years and see, and also see about the other towns and their situation. One question I had was, I see, okay, section 4, it says prohibition of temporary cannabis events. I know that restaurants are retail, so you wouldn't have a cannabis restaurant. They, do have them. However, what about cannabis dinners at private homes where you could have a club and have it all delivered? Because there are restaurants around. I looked it up pretty quick before I came here today. So I don't know how that would be dealt with, because it would be in a private home, but that doesn't mean I couldn't invite, 50 of my best friends every Saturday. So I don't know if that would come under, I just wanted to mention that.
I think
That's-
that, town council, prepared here, but then I'll try to answer.
Well,
And he'll correct me if I'm wrong, but this is largely in response to some events, both recently that, to my knowledge, events that happen in Hamden.
Yeah, I saw that
where
article.
They don't officially charge people for the drugs, but they charge them to come into the event. And that's usually done in a public space, or a private facility, but that's what this particular section was designed to deal with.
Well, I thought you did a great job because nobody's happy. Well,
That's democracy at its best.
and let's be amended, so maybe in a few years, we would do, now, I also don't know how you would figure out who you're gonna give the license to. Because somebody's not gonna like it if they don't get it. I don't know.
There
how that
are
works,
some
but
state,
anyway.
some state statutes that detail what we can do. I think the statute has expired on the prohibition of more than one if you were
Oh,
less than
okay.
25,000 residents. I don't know where that stands, but that would be something we deal with at that point.
Well,
And quite honestly, the consideration that this board was looking at when we were talking about allowing retail, we were talking about one place.
okay, but I am happy with this, and since we can review it again, maybe my opinion will change, but people can still access the cannabis. It's not like if we don't have retail, they can't get it anywhere.
Agreed. Deborah, thank you very much. Tracy, got anybody else online?
Nobody has their hands raised.
Nobody has their hand raised?
There's
Oh, yeah,
somebody
wait.
giving a manual.
Eli, name and address, full name and address for the record, please.
Thank you. Eli Foyer, 1221 Great Hill Road. Can somebody just confirm I'm being heard? I can.
You are.
Excellent, thank you. I'm joining the meeting to register my opposition to the proposed ordinance. I believe it is regressive and unnecessary, both against the broader public opinion, how public opinion has moved in this country, and as a fellow online attendee pointed out, against the prevailing opinion in town as documented with the town's own polling. I think this is a proposed solution to a problem that doesn't exist. I'm not aware how the town has demonstrated the harm that they're seeking to address. And I think it will have unintended consequences, and I'm opposed. So that is my opinion.
Thank you very much, Eli.
You're welcome.
Anything else at all? Thank you, bro. Name and address for the record, please.
My name is Lou Rinaldi, 201 Water Street. I'd like to start by saying that I also appreciate the approach that the board has taken. I realize that it's very much a moving target. Statute and regs are still evolving, even as it will continue to evolve in the legislative session that convenes next month. Although perhaps for the final time, from what my understanding is in terms of the codification at that point. I'd like to share a letter that I submitted to the board, which I will read now. Regarding section 3 of the proposed ordinance, I applaud the board's apparent decision to allow non-retail licensed cannabis businesses in Guilford. I have spoken at previous hearings about the importance of the micro cultivators and such, so I absolutely salute that. I would also like to point out that it is already trivial to purchase intoxicating hemp-derived THC products from at least 2 existing retailers in town operating today, both of which are on the Boston Post Road and were entered in with the testimony. Neither of these businesses is licensed by the state as would be required by Section 3. And one of these two businesses, which is Puff City, is a plaintiff in an active federal lawsuit alleging the state's redefinition of THC violates federal law. Governor Ned Lamont, Attorney General William Tong, Chief State's Attorney Patrick Griffin, and Department of Consumer Protection Commissioner Brian Caffarelli are all named as defendants. Puff City and its investors clearly have no qualms about litigating, and one could reasonably assume that any action taken against their operations by the town might meet with a similar response. With unlicensed de facto retail sales already occurring in town, wouldn't it make more sense to permit licensed retailers rather than banning them? How would the board explain to residents a policy position that bans licensed retail while simultaneously permitting unlicensed retail? And to the previous commenter's point, all of the risk that the board is hoping to mitigate by banning the retailers has already been assumed, whether the board has realized that or not. And I don't say this in a gotcha way or anything like that. It's just, you know, I sincerely hope that logic and reason will prevail in this matter. And I humbly make myself available to the board to answer any questions or clarify any of the points that I've raised here.
Lou, thank you very much. And might I add, you bring up a good point. I was at a Connecticut Conference of Municipalities presentation somewhat recently where the Attorney General addressed that very specific issue about cannabis infused beverages as well as some of these smoke shops. And they have admitted point blank, they haven't had the bandwidth to spend the time to figure out how to start investigating in these kind of facilities. Yes, one of which operates in Guilford. And our police department is also very much interested in, they're aware that there may be some, aware that they may be only, we're not accusing them of doing something that is against the law. But they are aware that this is an issue that we're going to have to deal with, regardless of what we do here tonight.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying a couple things. I do have one question about Wake Road. Thank you for the information. And now, appreciate it. You say it's already trivial to purchase. I'm not sure I understand what you mean by that, trivial.
So are you familiar with, yes,
Simple, straightforward,
Yes.
available.
correct. And you know, if you were to leave this building and go there right now, I'm sure you would be able to.
I just didn't, I don't want, I'm not trying to nitpick with you. I just want to make sure I understand the point you're making. The other one is intoxicating, which is more subtle problem. So if, as I understand it, there's beer and there's other products that have some sort of cannabis components to them. Is that what we're talking about? And is the intoxication from the alcohol, from this infused, whatever it is, just if you know?
So this is a very large issue unto itself, but long story short, the 2018 Farm Bill effectively allowed what some have called a loophole, others have built substantial businesses on the premise, including some of the corporations who are licensed producers here in the state of Connecticut are now getting into this side of the business, hedging against what's happening here in this kind of scenario where there are various products. I can't speak to what they are specifically, but they claim compliance under the 2018 Farm Bill's definition of what a hemp-derived product can be.
And is that the subject of this lawsuit that you mentioned? Is that part of it?
The state's response to that, trying to supersede what's laid out in the Farm Bill, is what the lawsuit pertains to, because the plaintiffs contend that the state overreached in trying to redefine a federal law and reinterpret it at the state level.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Lou, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we're gonna go back online. Trey? Erin, name and address for the record, please.
Hi there, my name is Erin Gorman Kirk, and I'm 747 Old Stamford Road in New Canaan, Connecticut, 06840. And sorry, I'm driving. I've
Thank
pulled
you.
over.
Thank you, Erin.
Pretty
You and
bad.
I corresponded earlier today. Just of note, I know you're not a resident of Guilford, so you would not directly be impacted by it here, but you're welcome to share your comments.
Thank you so much. And I do appreciate the fortitude that you've shown when you're trying to change these rules. For the greater members of the audience who don't know who I am the first in the nation cannabis ombudsman. I am working for the state of Connecticut to protect our patients, our veterans, and our senior citizens, and to keep medication that is safe and vetted and has certificates of authenticity available for consumers and patients. I today was made aware of a very distressing situation in which THC products are being sold out of a store near where I live. I draw a very hard line in the sand about anything that looks like children's packaging, is inducing to children, or that has THC in it unless it's sold in a proper dispensary that's licensed by the state of Connecticut. So I have been extremely hard against those who are breaking those laws. For that reason, we think that veterans and seniors and the non-ambulatory patients that we serve would very much be better served by having a local dispensary. And yes, they can go to Branford, we understand that, but we do feel that our patients shouldn't have to travel outside their own towns. We also support the locals who want to bring these businesses to the forefront and to participate in our framework. I am also a designated party. Out of 50,000, I was chosen as one of 25 to represent those of us who believe that rescheduling should occur at the DEA. On that basis, I think that we should consider here in all of our towns that this is coming whether we like it or not, that this is already here, as Mr. Rinaldi and others have pointed out, and that the best way to handle this is to make sure we are using licensed, proper DCP oversight dispensaries. And the only way you're going to do that is to make sure you permit them, or else it's all going to be done anyway. And it's going to be done in a way that harms people. We just had a kid sent to the hospital for taking a 50 milligram edible. That is 10 times the package we can have. And it's 50 times the level we're supposed to have here. And yet they're selling it. It's outrageous. It's unjust that people have paid these huge amounts of money to get in our framework. And then we're letting them go. And we're then having municipalities, and forgive the terminology, but it's almost like you're legislating when you say you won't let these businesses happen. So I think that it really would serve your local people, the patients, and your local business and entrepreneur individuals to allow them to start a business that is within the compliant, that is compliant with the state, and that looks to the future when this is going to be an interstate and an international framework. So I thank you very much for your time.
Aaron, thank you very much, and also thank you for the work you're doing on behalf of the state as the ombudsman. One of the things that occurred to me, particularly as it relates to these non-licensed operations, is that what we are doing today, or contemplating doing today, actually gives us the right to go after those individuals while the state tries to figure out, while the legal system and the state tries to figure out what they're going to do. The attorney, as I told you, the attorney general himself said that we haven't had the bandwidth to focus on this and develop an enforcement procedures. We would then have the opportunity to implement enforcement procedures against those businesses here in town, in which area, well, potentially a nominal fine, but it's $250 a day. So, but Aaron, thank you very much for your comments.
If I could quickly add, may I add one more thing, sir?
Certainly.
I will be meeting with the entire staff of the Attorney General's office tomorrow. Just happen to have a meeting with them. And I want to bring up that we've got a kid in the hospital because we're not going after the right parties. And to allow people to bring a California product in here and harm one of our youth is just beyond egregious. So I really urge you to do the right thing by allowing a licensed, proper entity that is age gated, and then I continue to write legislation that says no packaging that appeals to children, line in the sand on anyone over, under 21, and just really helping our patients. And the last thing I'll say is, of the 100 entities and people that I've spoken to, 99% are over the age of 50. So these are people that are going to get proper medication for sleep, anxiety, post-traumatic syndrome, cancer, and other issues. So again, I thank you so much. And I know it's a tough job, but we do appreciate all your work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aaron. We're going to come back to the room. Anybody, sir, come on up.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Duncan Markovich. I reside at 45 Bradley Avenue. I wanted to thank the board for the opportunity to speak again here in my sister town of Guilford. I own Better Ways. We are a hemp and CBD store in the center of Brantford. We have graciously accepted and received the best on the shoreline for hemp and CBD stores for the last 5 years in a row. We're a chamber of Shoreline Chamber of Commerce member, in which I am more so concerned in that capacity. I understand this has been a very long-standing issue in this community, Brantford as well. Obviously, decisions have been made differently. With us having a medical dispensary established many years before any of this occurring, and then it opening to a hybrid platform owned by somebody who's not even from the state. I know I had mentioned this concern before, where, and as Aaron has mentioned, Lou has mentioned as well, this is happening. This has already occurred. We are behind the ball, and as a state with our thinking on this, it is harming patients. At the end of the day, people who require, not need, but require this as medicine. And it's prescribed to them. And what we're doing is creating an infrastructure with, you can do it here, but you can't do it here. And we need as I've learned as a commerce member, the integrity and strength of our communities along the shoreline. We need to work together. So having the compromise, which I do understand as legislators or leaders in your community, you have to do that at all times. You have to take the good and the bad and weigh it out. But what I foresee, as I've seen in other states, is when there are restrictions, that is when the bad actors get in. They find the space that you've created as a boundary and they get around it. So while I would applaud certainly in the agricultural town to have cultivation licenses, our state deeply needs a micro cultivation caregiver platform, which hopefully this last session we can do some work, since it's getting handed to the DCP at the end of this. You know, we want small business owners, we want entrepreneurs, we want forward-thinking people to make sure this is safe for the community, where and how it's ingested, safe away from the youth, but that all comes with education. The federal laws that Aaron had mentioned that are changing are going to take everything that the municipalities and the states do now and flip them on their head once again. And that's sort of been the landscape of this since 2018 with the federal farm bill. And as a municipality, you're going to get incidents like other retailers who are going to say, well, and we have these incidences, these institutions in Brantford, or there's one on Foxen Road in North Brantford, where they have the money to go to litigation and they have the federal laws to protect them. And that's where the supremacy clause with the federal law is gonna create more friction. So I am trying to look more forward thinking and say, let's get ahead of this. Let's just build a beautiful infrastructure where it is safe and it is as robust and regulated as possible, so that the right people get empowered to create an industry or to evolve an industry that's not going to be going in. And I just hope that you utilize active members in the community. You know, Lou has done a lot of work at the Capitol, as well as other advocates and colleagues within Connecticut and beyond. There are tons of other towns having this conversation right now. And I appreciate your more accepting positions on this versus just, we're gonna continue a moratorium and that's how it is. Because that's not where we are. That's not where we are. So thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Could I just ask you one quick question?
Certainly.
I seem to be getting a thread of, I just want to make sure I understand a common argument I think I'm hearing, which is if dispensaries, there's a suggestion that if dispensaries were allowed, that would crowd out some of these sort of marginal players that are trying to introduce, because I don't see that connection. But, you know, I mean, somebody's going to try and sell THC beer. They're going to try and sell the beer.
So I'm in the middle of that conundrum now. I have to go to my town board and ask what the picture looks like, because with these high hemp derived THC beverages and however the state wants to
Yeah.
attempt to redefine federal law. So I now have to, under the current statutes, I have to apply for a liquor license and a specialty cannabis beverage license to not sell liquor in my store. And so why would I spend all that money to then not be able to do anything? But also I'm on Main Street, I'm in between a restaurant and a wine bar, and those are my friends, so I wouldn't want to compete with them. But because the liquor industry had plenty of lobbyist intervention, they get to backdoor what a dispensary allegedly should be the only one to do. And this further underscores all of our points, is to continue to gatekeep who gets to do what and how and when, and it's gonna further create more problems instead of having a very clear pathway. The heart of the federal lawsuit that Puff City is now applying to the state of Connecticut is the state has redefined so much of this language that it is unconstitutional. A layperson cannot understand any of this, and you need a high-profile lawyer to go through it to come to the same conclusion of what is all of this anyways. This is gatekeeping by a certain group within the industry to retain their power, when in fact, as we see in other states like Maine, which have robust protections for both small businesses and larger entities entering this, it's may the best brand win. Why are we focusing on who and how little or many? We're not doing that with liquor brands. And we're also not making things single serving. That would mean everything would be the size of a nip in a liquor store, including beer. So we have to have more conversations, and I know it takes a lot of time, and I know you guys have a lot of other things on your plates, but collectively, from the municipal level to the state level to these regulatory agencies, the more we have these forward-thinking conversations, the less we're going to run into lawsuits, harm children. There's a continued stigma on a plant that heals. My entire business has been built on teaching people how cannabis benefits them and giving them a pathway to non-intoxicating federally legal products.
My question is just, what's the relationship between allowing dispensaries and blocking out these other distribution points?
By creating further restrictions, you will, the space, the negative space that you create, more bad operators who don't care. This is a product, it's on my shelf, and you will create more space for bad actors to enter. Like they will, if we can't get it in town, but we can get it there, but you have to sort of know the jargon. If you have an established place, then that's where the business is gonna go.
And so is the idea that the dispensary would be able to then sell the cannabis infused products?
Well, that's what dispensaries do, yeah.
In addition to straight marijuana gummies, was you suggesting there would be alcohol infused products?
No, not at all. No, I'm so sorry.
Well, that's what I'm.
Yeah, no, there are no products within Connecticut that are a combination of cannabis and alcohol. That is not on the horizon.
So these infused products are like power drinks or something that happen.
The infused products are with cannabis. There's just there's varying degrees of intoxication. At the federal level, if the THC on a cannabis plant doesn't exceed 0.3%, we call it hemp. If it does exceed that 0.3%, we call it marijuana. For liquor, the metaphor is marijuana is Budweiser and hemp is O'Doul's. They're both beer, it's just the alcohol content.
Tucker, thank you very much. One point of interest is that
Yes.
this community, unbeknownst to a lot of us, even though we were actively engaged in some form of government, several years ago passed an ordinance that prohibited medical dispensaries when only medical dispensaries were allowed in the state. It was a rather unusual situation, but that was in our code. Now, this ordinance does not prohibit dispensaries, all right? But
A medical dispensary,
medical
you mean,
dispensary.
this is for
medical,
adult
yeah,
use.
for medical dispensaries, so that there was a prohibition against medical dispensaries when that was the only thing that was allowed. And I understand fully well that the economics of running just a dispensary doesn't work, right? But I'm also very well aware that at least three developer types reached out to us while we were discussing this very same issue, looking to establish a presence in Guilford. They were national, not small businesses, right? But which is a different situation from what you're doing. But
Correct.
one of the things that became pretty clear to me was in order to meet the state qualifications for minority ownership, or it wasn't minority, it was disenfranchised or impacted.
The social equity
Social equity.
lottery.
Right.
So I'm gonna bring everything together for you. So the delineation between adult use and medical. The plant is medicinal, whether you're getting high or not, whether your intention is to get high or not. You're getting a complex grouping of molecules that are healing you, that whether you're aware of it or not. We were physiologically evolved with an endocannabinoid system. We have it in our bodies. This is not new information, but this was information that was blocked from schools of medicine from 1937, because why would we teach doctors about a system that they could heal and treat when there's no products that they can use that are federally available and legal at the time? Prior to 1937, cannabis was one of 5 ingredients in every single medicine out there. So it's not, I'm 21, I want to get high and that's that. They're still getting a ton of medicinal benefits, including anti-inflammatory benefits from CBD. So that, in my mind, the distinction of this is medicinal or this is adult use is more, this person has a specific or acute medicinal problem, myself, pain management and neuropathy, that, okay, a prescribing physician will suggest these are stronger tools for balance in your wheelhouse. If you don't qualify as a medical patient, you still have access to the plant. We don't tier alcohol. We don't say, well, just because it's beer, then it's going to be taxed less than if it's vodka. You know, there's a lot of misconceptions with this. But going back to your point, there are certain logic breaks. The social equity licensing. How would one assume that somebody who is coming from a life of being disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs could possibly fathomably afford a $3 million ticket after their lives have just been ramshackled by drugs? So to set that paradigm up, a pay to play, people who qualify based on reverse redlined neighborhoods. I came from banking. They said, don't do this with mortgage rates. We did it with cannabis licensing. So again, this is why I encourage and implore more conversations so that we can have the best interest for the public but for also the state with how this is getting rolled out.
I appreciate that, and I think what we may be getting to is a point where those conversations are gonna evolve over time, but we're taking action today based on limited set of information that we have, or these issues that you just talked about not being settled. So this is
And the time clock and the game of chess is hard.
to do this, but
Yes.
I want to make sure that we don't have other people. who
I
want to
understand.
talk, because I think we've gone over the original 3
We
minutes.
have. This industry moves incredibly fast. Our state legislature moves incredibly slow.
Glacial pace of government.
Thank you.
We have anybody online? Anybody else in the room? No. Any comments from my?
Here we go, one.
Here we go. Come on up, please.
Wait for the winter look also.
Well, it's one of those things. I do no shave November, and then my staff
And then it
gets,
stays.
my staff gets me to continue to prove I can make a fool of myself in public, and I dress up as Santa Claus for the employee luncheon, which was noontime today.
So you're shaving tomorrow.
On Friday, because I got the senior luncheon on Friday.
Dylan Douglas from 101 Murray Lane. I've been to several of these before. My position is against Bill. My argument over most of these has just been the same as what we've heard from all the people online. It's coming. This is how. This is in other towns. Why are we blocking it from being here? Why are we driving this business to other towns? People have talked about, well, you can just go there. Just go there, go to the other town. I personally feel this speaks from a place of privilege. I have a car, I have the time, I have the money to be able to go there, get things, come back here. I am not worried about the children of this town. I believe in the people of this town in being able to educate their children. I have 2 children in the Guilford school system. I have explained to them about alcohol, about marijuana, about drugs. I have explained to them about moderation. I have had these talks with them. Sorry, I'm recovering from flu, so I'm not contagious, so don't worry. But still, look. So driving this to other towns does not make sense to me. Worrying about the children of this town does not make sense to me. Especially when doing a simple Google search, I can find at least 10 liquor stores in the town. That was from a quick search. It's probably more than that. Looking at those liquor stores, anyone can walk in. They don't say, hey, stay out, give me your license. You can't come in. You look old enough, you can come in, right? If you're too young, they'll card you before purchasing something, but you can get in there. The items are right by the door. Anyone who wants can run in, grab something, run out. This is far less secure than any dispensary that I've been to in Rhode Island, in Connecticut, in California. That personally worries me, that people have said, well, this sets a bad message for the children of our town to have a dispensary in our town. What about all the liquor stores? What about that? What about the low security of any of that in comparison to the high security of a dispensary? You can't even get into a dispensary unless you're of age, right? You can't even get in through the door. So I feel trying to block this is trying to put the genie back in the bottle, or you know where I'm going. So this is happening. Why are we fighting it for so long rather than, as Doug was saying, define the infrastructure, set out the boundaries, figure this out. And actually make it easier and safer for the people in the town.
Dylan, thank you very much. Anyone else?
Thank the board here for having us out here. It's a little hard to find, but we found it. I wanted to read.
Full name.
Oh, sorry, Matthew Rader, 32 Chapin Island Road, Guilford. I want to reiterate what a lot of the people that are against the bill were saying about having a dispensary in town. Having a legal dispensary allows people that work casually use it, that want to get some marijuana, to get that. They might go into Puff City not knowing that that isn't real marijuana. And it happens. I talk to people that are casual users, and that's the part that upsets me when that happens and they get sick and stuff like that. The other thing I want to talk about that no one really mentioned as much is this, temporary private party ban. I think we should have that ability. I mean, what would be wrong with opening up the fairgrounds for a cannabis growers party? I don't think that, when you open up a business, when people are passionate about it, they don't always do sports. It is recreation. I think, whatever we call it, but when you get together and do something commonly, it doesn't have to be sports. So that's my vote is, dispensaries, but even if it was just the one, I'd be okay with that. We don't want it out of control. We don't want it, we don't want it in the downtown. It wouldn't go there, but on Route 1, why not, it adds value to the town. And it gives us a view of like, we want to attract younger folks that are passionate about cannabis to the town, to buy homes, to go to our restaurants, because they might know that we're open and accepting of them and it's not a ban on what they do,
Thank you. man.
Thank you.
Way online. Still no? In the room? Come on up.
Hello,
Hello, good evening.
I'm Sue Heidinger. I live on Bittersweet Circle. Thanks for having this meeting tonight and for this opportunity for the public to respond. I want to state up front that I do not disparage medical use marijuana. My heart is for those people that feel the need and have to use it for relief. But I also want to speak to some issues that we haven't quite heard a lot about tonight. And that is the addictive issue of marijuana. While we have lauded and praised the medicinal use, we are turning a blind eye to the fact that there is much out there that points to the addictive nature of marijuana. And that it is a gateway to other hard drug use. And that there are casualties at the end of that. I lost a 29-year-old son who started in the school system with marijuana for anxiety and a gateway to hard drug use. And he died 6 years ago around this time of year with tainted fentanyl. Now, I don't share that story to tug at your heartstrings. I'm sharing it so you can hear these words. Just this week, Elton John came out on national news coverage saying that the US and Canada have made the worst decisions ever to legalize marijuana because it is a gateway drug. And I do worry about our children. And we are the gatekeepers for our children. And I think one of the clear questions tonight is, are we going to promote addiction for profit? That's what I implore this board to consider. I think the way the ordinance is proposed tonight is probably a good compromise, and I appreciate the positions that you must be in when you wrestle with this. But do remember this question. Do we promote addiction for profit? Please do not. There are so many studies that are now coming out of countries that have been ahead of us. In the UK, in Denmark, that have shown increased psychosis, increased mental health. In our own country, in the state of Colorado, they thought it would close up equity disparities. They have found out in the last 5 years that that gap has widened. It has not decreased disparities. It has increased them. People that are getting addicted, 1/3 of the users get addicted and go on to use more drugs. There's a greater chance of addiction to our children with the development of their brains. When we go to a town event, a couple of years ago, somebody told me they were at the Hot Air Balloon Festival on the Guilford grounds. And it was spoiled for them because it reeked of marijuana. I think when our young toddlers and our children are playing and having picnics and riding their tricycles on the Guilford Green sidewalks, that those children have a right not to have to smell marijuana being used. Again, I repeat, this is not aimed to discourage or disparage the medicinal use community. And there are safeguards in place for that. So I just implore you again to think about what happened 50 years ago as a boomer with cigarettes. We were told not to worry about them. Then we became wiser. Oh, there were downsides. And then the greedy producers went ahead and added more chemicals and tainted things so that our lung health took a nosedive. I worked for 38 years as a respiratory therapist, and I saw the results of that every day. And I have also responded to many overdoses in the emergency room. And then I had my son as well. So I do say that it's not just about the profit. And it shouldn't be, the board shouldn't feel pressured to say, well, it's here. The horse is out of the barn. No, let's be wiser than that. Let's look at the tobacco industry. And by the way, the CEO of OxyContin with the big pharma, okay, you know what he's doing now? He's investing in marijuana companies. That should tell you something. This is where the big money is. And this is not everyone's motivation. I understand that. But for some it is, and America greed will be what it is. And our town should be very cautious and prudent and wise. And I pray that for you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else?
I just have a-
First time before we go back to seconds.
It was a point of information. Just, you said that smoking any type on
On town property is prohibited.
prohibited, right?
I'd just like to say ditto.
You gotta go, you gotta come back. Sorry,
These are the
sorry, Lynn.
mics.
Only person in the room. So thank you, and I ditto that, and I like to say that you read the articles and I keep up on this. Science is coming out now, and I think as a nation, we're going to look back in 10 years and say, oops, what did we do? I think the tobacco industry is a good example. I know the cat is out of the barn, and so we can't prohibit everything. Again, I think you've done a good thing. I would rather that, you know, it was statewide, but if in our town, we can prohibit, I'm gonna call them shops, you use the word always dispensary, it's not this medical aura to that word. But So I stand by what I said before, but thank you again.
Thank you. Anyone else, second bite at the apple?
Yeah, me too.
What's that? I didn't, see it, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I don't agree with everything these two ladies said. I think people should be able to do whatever drugs they want in their home. I don't care. Heroin, whatever. I think people ought to be able to do what they want. That's their prerogative. But when you live with a community of people, you have to take into consideration the other community members. And medical marijuana, I think that's great. You should be able, it should be free if it's gonna help you. But I don't, and you've kind of cut things in half. The retail, you'll prohibit, but you're letting the grows. And then, like you said, we can revisit. I don't think if you allow the retail, there's no going back. That's it. And it becomes an issue that if you already have one shop in town, well, you have to allow a second one because I don't know if that will happen. We don't know what's gonna happen. And the psilocybin is coming down the road now too. So this is not gonna be the only issue that we have to deal with. So I'm not against people smoking pot. Listen, I'm 67, but I was in college in the 80s and I tried smoking pot about 5 years ago, put me on my keister. So it's too strong for me. But look, I think anybody, like I said, can do any drugs they want. Just don't want you doing it when I'm coming out of IKEA. And, in your house and, actually, I even think that if you want to get high, maybe it should even be free in your own house. I'm not against that stuff. But the retail, and as I said, the community, you have to respect the other people. And even it's a minority that you have to respect. I just don't think it's, yeah.
Debbie Dean, 18 Sugarloaf Road. I was at the Board of Selectmen meeting, and I've been going to a lot of the Board of Select meetings and sort of giving my opinion on all of the establishments and all of the items involved in the ordinance. And I think that it would be a gift to our community and our children in order to have the ordinance. I've never seen so many people so excited about marijuana. It kind of blows me away to think of how it's like their whole life. It probably isn't, but that's the way it seems to me. I do realize, as everyone said, that the horse is out of the barn, but I think that time will tell. And I do believe that I'm older and I understand most of the young people feel a different way. I think that there's some wiseness with some wise decisions to allow this to evolve and happen and see what and how this all plays out. I don't think that we should feel bad about taking our time making these decisions. I don't think they're easy decisions. I think they're decisions that impact the quality of life in our town. I do believe everything that Mrs. Heidinger said. I agree with a lot of what she said. I'm sure that all of us have had some issues within our family with people who have been involved with drugs and things have not turned out well. And it does, there is an ad, and I mentioned this at the meeting the other day, from Meriden and Youth Services and maybe Rushford. And it says that the most misused drugs behind marijuana and alcohol are prescription drugs. And I just say that because for underage children, those are the most misused drugs, alcohol and marijuana. And alcohol has been here. Maybe we can learn from that we shouldn't now just go ahead and approve marijuana just because two wrongs don't make a right. Plus the fact that if someone gets stopped for an infraction with driving, you can test for alcohol. You can't test for marijuana. You need blood work, and that's invasive, and they won't take blood work. And I know this for a fact because it happened to someone I know. So there's a lot of reasons why I think that for us to pass this ordinance, it gives us more time. I don't think that every town along the shoreline has to be the same. Madison has an ordinance against this. Clinton does and Westbrook does. So it's not that every town along the shoreline has to have this. We can be different. We can wait and see how this evolves, and we could always change it in the future, as has been said. So, and I do want to mention one thing. I did start a petition against marijuana and the various things in town, and I was at my voting district up at Melissa Jones, and I had an older person come up to me and say, "Oh, you really should try it. You know, it's very relaxing. There's nothing wrong with it. I just had a smoke before I came out this morning." And so he was drinking and he had been driving and he had been smoking. And then I spoke to one of our local police officers, and he mentioned that many young children come to school and their clothes reek of marijuana. And I don't know if there's a secondhand smoke type of thing with marijuana. So not everybody uses it, even though we might be an affluent town. Does it mean that everybody teaches their children about drugs? Or that they aren't careful with their children and drugs? Thank you.
Okay, anybody online? No? Anybody else? Going once. What? Get to the next one. All right, the public hearing portion of this meeting is now concluded. Thank you very much, everyone, for your input. Second item on the agenda for us this evening is to take action on the proposed ordinance. I would entertain any comments from board members. I'll start a little bit. I think it's been a long-standing conversation that we've had over several of these meetings. And it has been a difficult decision. And there is passionate sentiments on both sides of the issue. And quite honestly, my civil libertarian bent has been challenged throughout this process. But I think that as a group, the conversations we've had in our regular Board of Selectmen meetings on this issue have fashioned, have formed what we are putting before people tonight. So I'm comfortable with it, particularly as it relates to the fact that this is not the final decision on this going forward. We have the opportunity to revisit this for our future. We have the opportunity to revisit this issue. So that's sort of my position at this point, and I can support this. No.
Okay, so
You don't know.
I don't think I've moved farther on an issue than this issue over the last 10 or so years. I was deeply offended by the criminalizing of marijuana and how it was inappropriately, appropriate's the wrong word, inequitably applied in society. I thought it was a real problem. And I was extremely in favor of decriminalizing this. I'm moved and completely convinced about the medical uses, and I think I'm feeling like there's a consensus, all of which has happened in a really short period of time. To Matt's point, as politics and government goes, right? I looked up the legislative, when this happened, and it was 2011, 2021 that it was legalized, but 2011 that it was decriminalized. So in that sort of 10-year window, a lot has happened and a lot of attitudes have sort of changed. And I think we've all sort of heard that. Now, ironically, I'll try and keep this sort of tight. On the site that I look up here, my eyes go to the bottom where they sometimes run ads, and sure enough, there's an app, Weed Maps, try ordering from retailers. So it's a competitive marketplace out there. And this will actually come together for me. I'm strongly impressed with the number of people who are very much in favor of this. And it's not just the folks here who have come to many of our meetings and articulated their positions very well and have been super helpful. To the point about the survey, I think a lot of people want access to marijuana, and I'm pretty convinced that there's access to marijuana with this compromise that we're getting together here. You know, there's delivery, we're encouraging or authorizing, allowing some of the other uses. Branford's not that far away. I mean, I hear the tax issue. That's not enough for me to decide. I think this is either a good idea or it's not a good idea. To be swayed by those dollars wouldn't be enough to move me to this. So I think we came to a great spot by closing this ordinance. There, tied it together.
You did. Okay, well done. The closing argument?
I don't know.
Also in favor of the ordinance. We've talked about this for so much and for so long. I feel like I'm just confused. But I think there are a lot of people in town who feel that their quality of life, their perception of their home would be so damaged by allowing this. But I think we have to honor that. It's the comments you made about respecting the community. Really is what it boils down to. So for me, I don't think anyone's harmed by this. I think anybody who wants to do whatever they want in the privacy of their own home has plenty of opportunities, plenty of access. So I think this is a good compromise. I'm very comfortable.
I too agree with this ordinance, and I think it's a good compromise. You know, I think when our state decided to go this direction, I think probably they were, you know, driven a little bit by the dollars and cents of it all. That, to me, that's just a bad thing. And I don't see where going any other direction feels any need. I mean, you know, we don't have to have this, okay? And to see how other towns are doing, I don't have a problem with that. I think this has been a good compromise. I just think, you know, there are too many downsides that are unknown at this point. So, no need. Medical marijuana exists. We'll have that need. That's fine.
Thanks, Josh.
I'm trying to think of something new and different to say. I think I basically agree with my colleagues and name. Peddlers. You. Deb. Deborah. Okay. It's going, I believe this ordinance will go into effect, but there will be an opportunity going forward to rethink it if we need to, or if the public wants us to rethink it. So it's at least, it will be a closed door for the moment, but there will be opportunities to rethink it if we feel we want to go a different way, or the citizens feel they want to go a different way.
So the two products that we have not, that nobody's mentioned here today, that have popped up in some of our other meetings are sugar, caffeine, and salt, right? Listen to this, an astonishing podcast this week that talked about how the tobacco companies, when their market was getting squeezed, I remember this, RJR bought Kraft back in the whatever, long time ago. And they said there was a noticeable switch in the production of a lot of the food products. And the phrases they use are just incredibly memorable. ultra palatable and hyper processed foods, okay? Basically designed foods to make it impossible not to eat more than you should be eating, okay? Owned by tobacco companies, driven by tobacco companies who had a tremendous experience at this. Now, can you believe every single thing you hear on every single podcast? No, I try to kind of sort of pick surveys of different stuff and try and get some information. My only point is that it's a tough world out there. There's a lot of temptations, there's a lot of challenges to a healthy lifestyle. I don't think this is one of them. I think this is acceptable because I hear from a lot of people how much they get out of the product. And I just think, as some of the points have been made, there's enough people in the community who are opposed to having retail spots that this is a responsible place to get.
I think I'd probably be remiss if I didn't bring up sort of an elephant in the room, which is one of the more contentious issues over the last year in this community was the decision by the App Foundation to move, to buy a facility in Guilford and set up a methadone clinic. Right. That may have formed my decision more than my classic civil libertarian bent, et cetera. Contrary to the contentions of some people, the town did not invite, nor did this board make it possible for the App Foundation to come into town. The App Foundation is coming into town because there are some, I think the number is closer to 500 patients who live in zip codes between Branford and East Lyme, who are current patients of the App Foundation. They today have to drive to either West Haven, downtown New Haven, North Haven, to get their daily treatments, which allows them to continue to be productive citizens in this world. So that was also part of the thinking that went into my thinking, that it was important that we look at this sort of holistically. And again, I'm not saying if you smoke pot, by the way, I went to college in the 70s too, and smoked my fair share. Doesn't mean you're gonna go to cocaine or heroin or fentanyl or anything else. I completely understand that that's not necessarily the case, but there will always be people who start out on something and wind up somewhere else. So anyway, and that's most of the patients in the App Foundation are there because they had legal drugs at one point. But as we know, the Sackler family and Purdue Pharma and those folks, they did exactly what you just said. They manipulated the system, they gamed the system, and a lot of people wound up with problems because of what is known as nothing more than profit motive. So anyway, any other comments? I don't mean to take the last word, but we should get the opportunity to do that. Anything else? All right, does anyone want to propose a motion?
Make the motion.
To approve the
ordinance as
drafted.
I'll second it.
Further comments or questions? Hearing none, let me try your minds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that motion carries. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Before I do that, once again, thank you very much for the way this meeting was conducted. This is civility at its best. It doesn't always exist in today's modern political world, but I think we saw evidence that it is still possible in our community. So thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, that's right. Got it.
I need the motion to adjourn.
We did. We voted. Yep.